we've got some celebrating to do. There is a very talented golfer in our world who has had a very, very big week and has some more big weeks still to come. And with that, let me officially welcome in from Walnut Creek as the PGA Director of Instruction, Ryan Lenahan, who in the world of golf, especially in Michigan, has made everybody extra proud, man. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing good, Bill. Thanks for having me on. A little tired. I think I'm still on West Coast time right now. I just had a busy day of teaching and somehow got to balance getting ready for a major mixed into that. But other than that, I've been doing pretty good.
Well, we've got so much to dig into. First of all, for those who aren't there, let me set the scene because Ryan was competing in the PGA Pro tournament at Bandon Dunes, right? So this is, first of all, a journey to get to Bandon. And then secondly, you're competing against other PGA professionals from around the country so that 20 of you, I think is the number, will qualify or can qualify to play in the PGA Championship, the major championship. And Ryan had himself some magical moments in down the stretch. And I think it's maybe fair to say that you went kind of viral for your reactions afterwards and the things you had to say. So can you kind of take us back just a few days ago to when you're at Bandon and your awareness level of what leaderboard looks like or what you need to do in order to advance or at least have a chance to advance?
Yeah, I think I almost go back to day two. I did not have the best of rounds, to be honest with you. I kind of struggled. Even if I go back to round one, I got off to a great start. I was 4 under through, I believe, 14 holes, and I know I had a really tough stretch ahead of me. And I actually had some two bad breaks that cost me in my first round that kind of really killed the momentum of my round. I hit a ball that landed in the fairway and kicked dead left, went into a gorse bush, and then had to hit the wrong club in the next hole that was all over the flag. And so the hole that I made, I hit it in the gorse bush, I made double. The next hole, I hit it right at the flag, made bogey, and all of a sudden everything was erased very quickly. And I came out flat my second round. I did not play well. And I honestly walked off the green in round two thinking I had missed the cut. I really did. I thought I had to make birdie on my last hole. And I thought I had missed it. And I was a little deflated, to be honest with you. And I was irked at myself a little bit. And it kind of gave me a different mentality when I ended up making the cut on the number. I had more of a chasing mentality. And I played really well in round three. But to going back to your question, I mean, I down the stretch, I was very active. I'm one of those guys, I love to know where I'm at. It doesn't bother me. I think just maybe with my experience and stuff like that, I'm kind of used to it, I guess. But I was looking at the leaderboard pretty quickly or pretty often. And we had to wait on our last few holes on 15. We waited for, gosh, it was probably like 10 minutes, I'd say. And when I got to 17, we had to wait. I looked to see where I was to see if that number was changing. And on 18, we waited and I looked to see where I was there. And I knew it was a par five. And I think the hardest part was that the wind was coming off so hard from the left and there's a hazard on the right. And I mean, it's blowing 30 miles per hour. So is it a matter of, do I play aggressively and try to hit driver and really pinch it down there? Or do I kind of just play it as one of those things where I kind of, decided, I'm going to stick to my game plan. I'm going to play as a 3-shot hole. And, walking up to the green, I knew where I stood, and it had so many implications, not just for the PGA Championship, but it also qualified me for the PGA Cup, which was a huge goal of mine and something that I really wanted to do.
Well, part of the story that we have to tell has to do with the amount of practice time and competitive time that a PGA professional gets. It's not nearly what some people may assume it is. You are director of instruction at Walnut Creek, which means you have your hands on a club fairly frequently, but it's usually to demonstrate to a student what they need to be doing differently. That's very, very different from getting competitive reps in. And in that competition in the PGA Pro, you're competing against those with kind of similar restrictions to the amount of practice time you can get in. But none of that can prepare you for a Bandon Dunes kind of day. I don't know that there's ever a day where the wind is less than 15, and it's probably more normal for it to be in the mid 20s. So, along with not having the reps for competition that you would have preferred to get, how on earth do you prepare for Bandon?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, especially for a northern guy that's trying to get ready for an event in April. It's very challenging. A very unique kind of situation developed right before I went to Bandon. We were supposed to have the Michigan PGA has chapters within the section, and I'm part of the Eastern chapter. And we had an Eastern chapter event that was at Barton Hills in Ann Arbor that was canceled due to rain. And so they moved it, and it was going to be at Oakhurst instead, just to give us an opportunity to play. And they didn't get enough participation, so that was canceled. So believe it or not, I on Monday morning, the week I was leaving for Bandon, I drove up to Arcadia Bluffs, the northern chapter, which I don't belong to, had an event up at Arcadia Bluffs.
Nice.
I left at 6 in the morning, and everybody up there was probably looking at me like, what in the world is he doing? And literally the reason why I did it was just because I wanted one tournament rep just prior to leaving to go to Bandon. That's all I wanted. I needed to get myself some sort of pressure, try to get under the gun because I haven't competed or done anything. And but yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, I was teaching all up until when I left. I'm teaching all in between now in the PGA, which is kind of a tough thing. I mean, not many guys that are playing in the event other than the club professionals are probably doing anything other than practicing and getting ready. And it's one of those things where, you could, in this winter, there was times where I made some sacrifices and, would go on the simulator and, when it's 0 degrees outside and, you maybe aren't as motivated to go like think golf or anything, I would kind of push myself and say, you know what, I got to do this to kind of get ready for several months down the road and everything. And so it's a challenge. I mean, the timing of the event for us in April is really hard. We have our biggest
Yeah,
event at a time when our season's just starting, and
right.
it makes it really difficult. They're talking about possibly changing it just because of how unfair it is. But like, truthfully, I go out there and I'm like, the last 2 years I've had no idea what to expect. I mean, you have no idea what kind of shots you're hitting under the gun.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you went up to Arcadia to try this out, because most likely you encountered conditions that would be fairly competition conditions were, especially this time of year where it's a little cooler and the wind is almost always blowing up there. And Ryan, at the end of tournament play, when you were told that you made it, that you're in, and second year in a row into the PGA Championship, you had a pretty cool, really viral, emotional reaction during an interview. We talked about your family and told your kids you love them, and just it was like it all hit home at once in that moment for you. And I'm curious if you were surprised by the way that the emotions landed for you, or if you're just kind of living it raw and just extra grateful.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a very stoic person on the golf course. I don't show much emotion. My college coach always told me, he's like, when I come up to you, I don't want to know if you're playing good or if you're playing bad based on your, body language and everything. And I've always kind of held that, close to me where I'm very just, kind of just take one shot at a time, kind of boring to probably watch, but, I'm very stoic. And I think the thing is I mentioned to a bunch of members at Walnut Creek earlier today that I couldn't even enjoy really the beauty or the scenery of Bandon the last day, especially the last few holes when you're on the coast, simply just because you're so locked in. And I just tried to stay as very focused as I possibly could, and it was just one of those things where, my goals were within reach and everything. I think one of the hardest things though was just that the morning of the final round. And I remember this last year, and I think I used my experience last year to really help me this year. But you know, just, uh, just it's hard kind of sitting and waiting to go tee off. And I felt most comfortable when I was actually on the golf course. And, nothing was planned. I obviously just was so locked in, and I knew that there was implications obviously of just the PGA and the PGA Cup on the line in that last hole. And you work so hard the months leading up to it in the wintertime. You do everything you can. And I mean, there was days where I went out and played golf and it was in the 20s.
Yeah.
And I'd play 9 holes. And I didn't really want to play then, but I kind of had to just to try to prepare. And there were times where it was like literally snowing and I was outside playing. And wasn't ideal, but at the same time, it's like those are the kind of moments where you really appreciate where, it's like, okay, if I didn't, make those sacrifices, then maybe I wouldn't have this opportunity. And yeah, I was incredibly grateful to, just have a chance. I was grateful to be honestly playing on day three and I played well and I was really grateful to have a chance obviously on day four. And somehow, some way those putts went in on 17. You don't see on TV how hard the wind was whipping, and making those putts and all that wind was not easy. But if you ask me like, hey, you have a chance to qualify for a major and you have a putt at it on 18, like you're of course going to take that. I mean, it's like all you can ask for is an opportunity and a chance. And I stuck to my routine. I stuck to my process. I visualized that ball going in. And honestly, I walked up to the green and I had a feeling it was going to go in. And believe it or not, I just did. It was so odd and it's hard to explain. And
Yeah.
the hardest part was getting my approach shot to make sure it was on the shelf of where the flag was. A lot of people came up short, and it's really hard to make that because it goes up a tier, and it wasn't the easiest of putts. And so when I got it up in the upper shelf, and I felt good with my putter, I said, I have a good chance at this, and I really believe I can make it. And somehow, some way, it fell in.
Well, you got to love it when the good feeling you have pays off with a good result. And when all the dust settles and you're done with all the media and all the other, kind of the post competition responsibilities, you still have like a 19 million hour drive back to the airport. Then you got to fly back to Michigan. At some point in the last couple days, you walked back onto the property at Walnut Creek. There had to be kind of a hero's reception, I would think. What did the members do? What did everybody have to say?
Yeah, today it was a little chilly, so I was teaching in we have a halfway house, and we have two simulators in the halfway house, and they actually had their first opening event of the year. And I felt bad for my lessons because I had a lot of interruptions with people coming in and saying congratulations and everything. I have so much support from the membership at Walnut Creek. It's unbelievable. I addressed them afterwards, when they were kind of in our banquet room and everything. And I just told them, I said, when you're surrounded by great people, you're set up for success. And I have that at Walnut Creek, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate having that. And I mean, even when I just walked into the room, they had no idea I was coming in or anything like that. And I walked in and they all just applauded and, were hooting and hollering. And I mean, it was such a cool reception to have. And they're so excited, and it's an honor to represent the club. And as I said, I mean, last year I was very new. I started in March at Walnut Creek, so I qualified for a major a month later, and nobody really knew who I was. And I was like, what an introduction to everybody is. And I'm new, and then I qualified for a major. And so, obviously having a year under my belt, I've gotten to know a lot of the members, and they've been so supportive, and they really helped me. All that support and all the friends and family and everybody back home that reached out to me. I mean, that's really what helps me get across the finish line, when I know that, when I'm competing and I have all that support and backing back home. It really helps me and really motivates me. And all of those people that helped me and supported me or played a role in getting me across the finish line.
Yeah, so you're back home, and in a short time, you'll jump on a plane and you'll head to the PGA Championship at Aronimink, which my understanding is back to about 76 or 7,700 yards. Now, there are some not phased in the least by that, and then there are some like me who can't even imagine having to take on that challenge. Now, I don't know your game very well, Ryan. I don't know what you consider to be super long or super challenging. That sounds like it's both in my book. How do you set your expectations for this major championship? How do you define a successful week at the PGA?
I think a successful week is I just want to go out there and play well and think well, limit mistakes. the results can kind of take care of himself. I'm not one of those guys that's going to say I'm only there to win. I mean, truthfully, I feel like a little unrealistic. I mean, you can't put a guy that works full time in the same boat as the top in the world. I mean, it's fun being in that environment, but at the same time, I played professionally for a while, and I mean, it's not the same. And I joked last year when I played Quail Hollow. I said I came home and I had to regroove my 3-iron, simply because I had to hit it so much when I played there.
Right.
I
Right.
said I regrooved and regripped my 3-iron all week because that's all I hit. I didn't even hit a wedge. But I think at the same time that helps me kind of prepare. I mean, it's a test. I mean, every shot is a grueling test. Last year I learned that there's no easy shot. And especially when you add the environment and all the people around and just the atmosphere and things like that. But at the same time, it's exciting. But a successful week to me is number one, making sure that I'm enjoying it, I'm having fun, my family's having a great time, I'm playing well, and I limit mistakes. And I remember last year when I missed the cut on Friday, Quail Hollow, I was on 18, and I told somebody I doubled the last hole, and that was to not be the low club professional the second day. And I said to him, I said, I've never been so excited to make a double in my entire life, just because, I mean, just being there on 18 green, you appreciate how amazing that experience was, not just for me, but for my, wife and kids, my parents, family, friends, everybody. And to be able to experience that again is, I'm so excited. But if I can find some time to practice, which I will, and just play well, then I'll be happy next week, no doubt, or 2 weeks.
I would think being on the range at certain times would be just darn fun. I understand you're there to compete. I know you're not there as a kid at Disney World. You're not sightseeing, but I'd have a hard time not kind of looking down both sides of the range and kind of seeing what the best players in the world do to prepare for a major, because they're not messing around either, right? You may get a practice round in with the bigger name, more established players, but when Thursday rolls around, it is all business, and they don't really have much in helping a club along the way. So what do you expect from a kind of a golf nerd standpoint where you're on the range, and are you ever starstruck?
Yeah, gosh, yeah, I will say, I mean, in 2013, I was the first alternate for the U.S. Open, so I was allowed to practice at Marion, which ironically is right by Aronimink, where I'm going in about a week or so. And I remember doing a putting drill on the putting green, and there was nobody around. And I can't blame them, number one, because there was some no-name guy on the putting green. But then all of a sudden, I looked up, and there's like 5 or 6 people deep. And I look over, and Tiger and Stevie were on the other side of the green, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like that, like this atmosphere is unbelievable." And I remember after a little bit, you had to take a van, and you had to kind of meander through some buildings and stuff like that and get into a van, and then you had a police escort take you to where the range was. And I was in the van, and Tiger came around the corner, and he said, "Do you have room for me?" And I was like, "Absolutely." I'm like, "Come on in here." And he goes, "Oh, I have quite the entourage." He goes, "I'll wait for the next one." And I thought that was really cool. And obviously I really, like, at some point I wanted to see if I could ever, see him again. But last year, I mean, my experience with Scotty, I think that was so cool. I love how grounded he is. I love how important his faith is to him. I just love how he handles himself, and he is down to earth, and he's real. And I feel like there's a little bit of what's the word? Maybe a little bit of entitlement out there, I'd say. And there were some guys that were incredibly nice when I was out there last year, and there were some that you could tell that just as soon as they walked by you, they put their head down and wanted nothing to do with you. But there was actually quite a few that were very warm, welcoming, and I appreciated that. And I think that Scotty is one. I mean, you just appreciate how talented he is. And he's definitely one of my favorite players to watch. And I actually had some correspondence with his agent last year, And I did reach out to him a few days ago to see if there's any way I could set up a practice round. And I don't know if that's going to work. Who knows? But we exchanged emails quite a bit a year ago after my kids and his and Scotty's picture with my kids went viral. So we'll see what becomes of that. But I think that's the one person where I like his all around, you know, um, just personality and the way he handles himself. And I think he's just such a good like role model for so many people in the game of golf.
Well, we're proud of you, man. It's a really fun story to watch from a distance. And, since we did a TV show focusing on Walnut Creek a couple of seasons ago, we got to know some of the folks there. And Scott, of course, beat me on camera, as one would expect. And I love the fact that we have this local connection. And even though I understand when the PGA arrives, for reasons that I disagree with, the PGA of America has greatly reduced the number of club pro spots in the field. And you'll probably get, I mean, I hate to say, you'll probably get the toughest draw. You'll probably be out, if they could go early, they would, but probably early, late, or whatever. However it unfolds, we wish you the very best. Cannot wait to see you do some special things there. And just kind of we take here in Michigan, everybody, we take special pride when one of our own goes out and does it right. So congratulations.
Well, thanks, Bill. And I'll say this too. When I was down in North Carolina yesterday, they didn't announce me from my city or anything. They announced me on the first day from Michigan. And I mean, that it gave me goosebumps because the state means so much to me. I mean, I grew up obviously in Metro Detroit, and I mean, I'm all about Michigan golf. I mean, just it meant so much to me for them to just use the word Michigan to me because it's like obviously growing up playing in junior events and everything. It's all these everyone from the South. It was always guys that it was like every time you look at a leaderboard in a national junior event, it was guys from the South. And I just love how seeing a Northern guy or anything it is, I was really pulling hard for other Michigan guys last year and this year in the PGA Professional Championship. And honestly, it's such an honor to number one, be from the state, but to represent Michigan and Metro Detroit, or, however you look at it, Walnut Creek. It means a lot to me. I love this state. I'm a huge like Detroit sports fan. It means like the Michigan golf here is so good. I mean, every summer it's like, there's so many courses I'd love to go play. And obviously I don't have the time to do all that, but, golf is so good here, and it really means a lot to represent the state. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, go get them, man. We're proud of you and can't wait to see how it all turns out. Congratulations.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you having me on.